So where do we go from here? Actually, to go back to the morning and to the statement of Dr. Bachelet, I think so far as the thematics are concerned that she described, there is really very little that we can add in any significant way to what she put forward as the themes selected for UN Women. But what we've been talking about, and I think what would be very helpful to look to and analyze, is how UN Women situates itself within the UN system. And we keep talking about the responsibility of UN Women to civil society, the way we want to affect UN Women, and how we relate to this entity. And we say very proudly and happily, UN Women is us, and then we think a little and say, no, it is not, because after all, it's a UN organization, and the UN is a collection of governments who don't particularly take notice of us very much. So what is it? Is it us, or is it them, or is it the other? And I think to figure this relationship, if we can have some notion of that, it will be very helpful as one of the things that we have done today. It seems as if whenever we talk about mutual responsibility and somehow answerability of an entity to a group, there has to be some sort of mutual give and take. So how do we manage that so that we both benefit, both activists and feminists, and also the UN entity? We know that UN agencies usually do not answer very much as a regular basis to civil society. I mean, I don't think WHO goes around asking civil society, what do you think of me? Or what are your ideas about what I should do? Or any of the others. So if we want this one, which we've worked so hard to advocate for, to create, and we expect so much of, if we want it to be responsible to us and answerable to us, I think we also need to own it somewhat. And in order to own it, I think we should somehow give it something and then get something. We need to empower it so that then it can empower us. So how do we do that? We have mentioned some things during the day, and I think one of the most important things remains what we've heard from the field, and that is raising consciousness, not only of the importance of UN Women, but also of the importance of also of the UN itself. You'll be surprised, not in the places where they have culture, but the places where they don't have culture, like the United States, how little they know about such a thing as CEDAW. I speak at universities often. University students, graduate students, have never heard of CEDAW. You won't believe this, but that's the truth. We live in a cocoon of our own where we think that it's, how could they not, you know? And so we need to not only make this entity known, but just have the people understand what the United Nations is all about and how it could serve us, especially since in the last few years, the United States, especially for 8 years, did so much to harm the United Nations and to belittle it and to cut its budget and to limit its authority. And some in the United States still see the United Nations as the enemy. Some governmental entities and some policymakers see it in that way. So one part of this mutual relationship is raising consciousness at the popular level of the importance of this entity, because we know also that governments more and more these days, when we see the Middle East exploding, we can imagine if Libya is exploding, you can imagine that almost everywhere there has to be answerability of some sort, responsiveness of some sort, and especially with the technology that we have at our disposal these days. So governments are affected by what people think. And if the people think that the UN and the UN women is important, then it's more likely that they would contribute to it, that they would give it some priority, that they would provide some resources. So the consciousness raising at the popular level, which is our work, we do that in our daily life, is important if it focuses not just on particular resolutions, which are important, 1325, CEDAW itself, and etc., but also on the UN process and how the mutual pressure between UN and national organizations can, in effect, push governments in a certain direction. So that's one way that we can have some influence on the future of UN women. And the other is another thing that we talked about and has been mentioned, and Farah just addressed it in terms of the financial crisis and the effect it has on funding on all institutions, especially a new institution, and especially a new institution that has to do with women. So what we need to do is apply the non-traditional ways of fundraising. And also this has something to do with commitment as well. If you owe some of your resources to the masses of women and men across the world, you have a different position in terms of strength than if you owe a lot of your money to the Saudi government, you see. So I think it makes a difference if we can try, especially with the young people, especially with young women who seem to be so ready to be energized. If they haven't been joining the movement in the numbers that we wish, possibly it's because we haven't inspired, or there hasn't been enough inspiration, because we see, even in places when they have been so restricted, when it comes to aspirations and hopes and possibilities, they do come and join and mobilize and do what they have to do. So partly we can do fundraising in non-traditional ways, and we can ask individuals to commit themselves, individuals who work for us, even on a small level, so that there is that mutual connection. So situating of UN Women in terms of what we can give it and also what it can give us. Again, I think it was very rightly pointed out a number of times that there is a difference between us and a UN entity. There are so many things that a UN entity can do and so many things that it simply cannot do. What it can do is to provide safe spaces for civil society to address the powerful and those who make decisions and make laws and allocate resources. Convening power. Hearing us itself, but more importantly, allowing us to be heard by others. So the convening power of UN Women on behalf of civil society can be a very important service, and also making sure that other agencies, and I think Dr. Bachelet herself mentioned that, but I think possibly with even more emphasis than she expressed today, and I'm sure that it's in her mind, to make the other UN entities not just work better, but be feminist in their outlook, to look at health issues, at reproductive rights issues, at labor issues from the point of view of women. And how they have been affected by this lack of equality. So I think the relationship between us and this new entity is something that needs for us to think more about and to form and to give shape to.